Hello. Hi, thank you for being here on a Saturday night. I really appreciate it. My name is Jessica. I'm from the Himalayan Writing Retreat team, and I'm just going to quickly introduce all the panelists and show you their respective communities' Instagram pages. I will also be dropping the links in the chat section, so please follow them if you like. So today we have with us Snehanshu, who is the co-founder of Cubbon Reads and a bookmark app. It's a dating app for readers. We have Molina Singh, who is the founder of Delhi Reads. We have Aamatullah, popularly known as My Literary Experiment on Instagram. She's a bookstagrammer. And we have Nirav Mehta, who's the founder of Broke Bombay. Our panel moderator today is Devdatta Das Gupta. She is the Himalayan Writing Retreat's Outreach and Operations Manager, and she's also, I like to show off about it, she's also a 3-time Limca record holder for most book reviews. So that's our panel moderator for today. And she's leading the upcoming Himalayan Reading Retreat in December at our retreat in Uttarakhand. So do check it out if you like. And I'll be sharing all these links in the chat section. Till then, over to you, Deb. Let's get started.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. So to get started, I have a question. I'll start with a question for all 4 of you. And which is like, I would like to get an overview of the reading trends that caught on in 2024 in your respective communities. What is your estimation for 2025? Aamatullah, would you like to start?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Trends that caught on, and I guess my community would be the Bookstagram community, because that's primarily like where I am online. I think a big trend that I've noticed is definitely since the pandemic, we've had a shift to video content. I think let's get the obvious one out of the way. Right now, the most kind of popular bookish content that I'm seeing in my little echo chamber is book reels, and that seems to be the only way to kind of get your recommendations across. I've seen a huge decline in reviews. I joined Bookstagram in 2015, actually, with a really bad phone and a very mediocre account. But at the time, Instagram was all about flat lays and aesthetic photographs and long captions. Like, there was no limit. You could really just write a really long review on Instagram. Now I think I'm seeing a lot, or at least the people who are writing reviews are getting a lot less engagement and traction. So at least on Bookstagram, that's been a huge shift. It's completely gone to the book talk, booktube sphere of video content. But on Instagram, even that has to be short and like catchy and kind of hit the algorithm. I'll be using that word a lot. And in terms of genres and reading, I think I'm seeing more people read. I know that outside of the online sphere, it feels like people have stopped reading, I think. But I'm online, I think reading has become cooler. And the cool girls are reading, which is maybe just because Instagram makes it look that way. But I think more people are reading, and I'm happy to see that, even if maybe they're not reading quote unquote great literature, whatever that means. But it is getting more people. Bookstagram and like Instagram is getting more people to kind of read. It's made it more accessible. So I think that for 2025, I hope that this continues, but I hope that it kind of diversifies and opens up into new spheres, and people kind of who have started reading maybe because of social media pick up different kinds of books next year.
I hope so too. Harsh, what's your thought?
So I am part of 2 communities. One is Cubbon Reads, and of course, the second is Bookmark, which is a dating app for readers. So I'll first talk about Cubbon Reads. We have seen the year begin with a lot of acts of God. So every time when people stack their books at the end of Cubbon Reads silent reading session, so there were at least 5 to 10 acts of God by Kanan Gill, which was the rage at that time. And the end of the year was more of Sally Rooney's Intermezzo. So same 5 to 6 number of copies from among the readers. And the good thing that happened through the year is a lot of translations also come into the place, which I'm really personally really happy and proud of the community, that because it's based in Bangalore, it brings together people from all the ages, right from kids to older people. So we see a lot of regional literature, especially Kannada, of course, being the home ground of Kannada literature. Kannada is big, but beyond that, Malayalam literature, as well as a lot of people bring Bengali as well as Odia and Assamese literature into Cubbon Reads. So that makes the space very, very heterogeneous rather than being very homogeneous, and which is the essence of doing it in a park as well, because park is the democratic space and park is a inclusive space. So getting people from all strata of society as well as all the kind of reading spheres and stages of reading really helps. Coming to Bookmark, which is more of a dating app, I'm really glad that fiction is driving way more conversations than nonfiction. And I think it will motivate more men to pick up fiction because they have been so consumed by atomic habits of the world. So now they will move towards fiction, because women, both in Cubbon Reads, majority of the fiction readers have been women, thankfully. So, but I'm really glad to see more number of men gravitating towards fiction for whatever reason. So that has been the trend from my side. Yeah.
Thanks, Harsh. Molina?
Oh, sure. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I think I run Delhi Reads, which is this offline sort of like very big community of readers, writers, poets, cinema watchers that come together to celebrate sort of creativity in all its forms and get together in the form of a conventional club, more like offline. So I think when you talk about reading trends, I think one thing that Aamatullah also talked about was like what pandemic shifted, and I think the pandemic really shifted our consumption patterns drastically, right? Especially for like say Gen Z or early millennials. Having to consume like 10-second, 30-second pieces of content on the daily and then shifting to a book to read that becomes supremely hard. Your attention span just doesn't cooperate. I think also, like Harsh said, there's a lot of rise according to trends that I saw in 2024 of people picking up self-help books a lot, way and above fiction, unless it was written by, say, a very popular author like Sally Rooney or Kanan Gill, right? And I think that could also be probably like sort of a side effect of capitalism, because people need quick fixes because their life is in shambles, but that's another conversation. But I think since I work from the space of an offline book club, I think one of the foremost trends that I've seen is that for people, reading or getting together for a particular creative art is not enough. For example, earlier book clubs were formed on the basis that you are people interested in literature and you want to read a particular book and be consistent in it, right? Or you're particular, like you really like theater and you would like to go watch theater on a consistent basis. But I think now, especially for our generation, someone who's grown up in the pandemic, someone who's been online for say their college life or work life, I think it really is about finding a connect, especially for like clubs like these, to their target demographic, which is, I think, to say that unless you have like this community aspect or a certain any aspect of connect going on with the people you're indulging this creative activity like in with, right, it doesn't work. So you can't just, I don't think book clubs are based off of the fact that you just want to come together to consume a particular piece of literature or be consistent in it. It is also in the form of the fact that you want to find community, that you want like more people connect people on like say common spaces and common interests, which is like where I think the concept of third places comes, right? Which is like apart from your home and work, people from our generation especially need these spaces. And I think the way we consume media is also being shaped by that. So when it comes to things like book clubs, I think that's one main driver of that aspect, that they need community as much as they need to connect to literature, and I think they go hand in hand. I think the second trend that I've observed is, since we've just become like sort of
animals of consumption, right? Whether it's a reel or a book, at the end of the day, it's a media consumption, right? Of with it, like, varying qualities. So I think what people really want, since there's this mass material of information available on the internet, is more like curators. So now when I see someone like on Bookstagram, or I see people running clubs, etc., they don't only act as like sort of people who help you get into literature, but also help you curate what kind of literature you should be reading in, like, say, this day and age, and the kind of authors you can focus on, given the amount of like resources available to you. So I think the second trend that I noticed was that people come to book clubs, etc., for curation as well, so that they can get reads according to their needs, according to their desires. So I think two things: community and curation. Yeah.
Thanks, Molina. Nirav?
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Can you repeat your question? Apologies. Just I can't hear you, Diptata.
Just the overview of the trends in 2024 in your community, and what do you expect for 2020?
Okay, so I'll speak from two angles. One is the book club that I run, which is Brook Bibliophiles Bombay chapter, and the second angle, which has recently come into my life, which is working out of a bookstore. Right. So for the unknowns, I work out of Crossword bookstores. I look after the overall customer experience and curation as well at Crossword. So considering Molina was stressing on curation part very well, that has been the driver for us as well, for me as well, and for my book club as well. With respect to consumption, I am seeing a lot of sci-fi consumption in my community. Considering Acts of God, as Harsh pointed out, a lot of people reading it, considering that has become like an entry point for a lot of people to go ahead and read more sci-fi literature, more speculative fiction, fantasy fiction, and all of those. I am seeing a trend of South Korean and Korean authors and Japanese books and cats and whatnot. Although I am not an animal hater of any sorts, I love it because, again, I come from a capitalistic world as well. Crossword sells crazy amount of cat related books and all of that, and it's a good thing. I'm like, at least people are reading, right? So I especially curated a collection of just cat books, just cats on cover, cats inside the book and whatnot. And that table which I curated for for two particular stores, those got empty in like 2 weeks. So the consumption is crazy with respect to that. And obviously a lot of men, if I go on the gender side of things, a lot of men have started reading. Earlier, most of if I go by stats from what I have from my book club on my Instagram, I used to have a 75% following of women and 25% of men. Now it has come down to 45% of men and 55% of women, right? So a lot of trends have changed in this particular year, especially also a lot of Indian literary fiction has come out really well this year. So overall consumption is very good. Of course, from a bookstore angle, it's like a Diwali for us every month, right? And apart from that, from a bookstore, from a book club perspective, and from a reading perspective, it's also extremely very well. I have been doing this for last 9 years with my book club since 2016, because my book club has been pre-pandemic, and we have always focused on doing offline meetups. We have never done online, and that ways, it has been great. And I see a flux of people joining us on every meet. So every meet there's at least 15 to 20 people out of the 55 people who come. At least 25-30% are new, and then they stick around. And then there is an active WhatsApp community which engages a lot on a day-to-day basis. So that's a good thing. I mean, like, overall consumption is great. 2025, I think, is the year for Indian generally fiction literature and non-fiction as well, because I think that's where we are headed, at least for 2025.
That's interesting to hear. So my next question again is for all of you. The question is that, say you're about to go to bed, you take your phone and start scrolling through Instagram or start watching Netflix. In that moment, how do you stop yourself and put down your phone and pick up a book? We'll start with Nirav this time. Yeah.
Nirav, you're on mute. I think Nirav would like to go last. Yeah.
All right, then
It's
Molina.
fine. That's fine. That's fine. I can answer it. I was just replying to a reel while answering your question. that justifies what I was doing. Okay. Sorry. Can you repeat your question?
Yeah, the question is like, say you're about to head to bed, and instead of going to bed, you're just picking up your phone and watching your reel, scrolling through your reels or watching Netflix. In that moment, how do you stop yourself, put your phone down, and pick up a book?
So I'll tell you my thing. What I do, I wake up at 4:30 every day. I have a slotted time from 5:30 to 7:30 to read. One, if I have that lucky day, and then in the night, it's between 9:30 to 11:30 I read. So I have dedicated around 2.5, 3 hours to read. Doom scrolling is again a part of life. I have now taken it into my daily activity tracker that if I am not doom scrolling at least 30 minutes in a day, that's not my day, right? And yeah, I mean, see, it's pretty obvious. If I have to be on Instagram, I need to know the trends. I work out of a bookstore. I have to know what trends are going to work and what trends are not going to work. So doom scrolling is a part of my KRA in my schedule on a per day basis. 30 minutes, just check out what the book talk trends are. And yeah, I mean, I connect to VPN and see the TikTok on my laptop, and I see the crazy amount of TikTok reels as well. So yeah, I mean, it's
So Molina, your take. I hope you do better.
Right. So I am a Gen Z at my core. So it's not like I am away from my phone or I don't want to act holier than thou. But I believe, like, since you asked, like, how do you put away your phone and that consumption pattern and start reading, right? I think the thing with reading is that we either, like, it's on two ends of a spectrum, at least for me, right? Either it's like aestheticized to a, like, the, peak of perfection, or it is completely abandoned, right? So, which is to say that I think people from the mere act of reading want to want the book to owe a result to them, which I think is a feeling we need to let go of, right? So the way once you let go of that expectation, once you make the book similar to how a series on Netflix is, right? Similar to how a reel is, you don't owe it that commitment, right? You can abandon it whenever and rewatch it again, right? Once you let go of that feeling of wanting a result, of becoming better or feeling enriched from a book, and treat it as like sort of like a friend in need, the way you do with other forms of media that you consume, I think it becomes way easier to consume a book, which is to say, like, a lot of also because of like Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, is that when we view the activity of reading a book, we see that you need to be cozied up in a bed and you need to have a coffee on your side, and we build it up so much in our head that we don't end up doing it. So for, at least for me, right, or you completely abandon it. So I was thinking that instead of like chasing this perfect commitment to a book that you need to finish certain pages of, etc., you just indulge in it the way you do with your Netflix shows and your reels, right? Read your cringy Wattpad rom-com from when you were 13. You can read an audiobook while you're doing your chores, right? You can just like read one page of a book that's abandoned. As long as you're reading, I think that trying makes so much more difference than your perfect commitment. So I think that's one thing that you can do if like the feeling of reading seems like a very huge prospect for you that you need to be prepared for, at least mentally, right? Just pick it up the way you would any form of media. You don't need more of a commitment to it just because it feels like a more worthier sort of creative act, so to speak. That is what I feel. So I think that's one tip I can take, I can give. Yeah.
Harsh, what's your tip?
So I'm very much in line with what Molina said. And reading, I think it's something that the only reason you should be reading is because you want to read, not because it's a mandate. And at Cubbon Reads, we actually champion the whole process of reading for pleasure more than for pressure. And it's okay if you read one book in a year. It's okay if you want to read the same book twice, thrice. It's okay if you have a checklist in mind, but it's something that you do for yourself. And that's why the no discussion policy of Cubbon Reads stems from there, that the moment you remove the layer of intellectualization from books, it becomes a personal, intimate act. which reading essentially is. So it is in its bare bones. So I never take out specific hours to read. If I am engrossed in a book, it will consume me. It will consume me day and night. There have been days when I did not check my phone because the book consumed me through the day. And there have been days when I'm totally lost into my phone or Netflix or whatever, because no book has kept me up. So I blame it on the book, not myself, if I'm not reading the book. That the book needs to be better for me to be engrossed in it. So, yeah.
Aamatullah?
Yeah, I mean, I was nodding so hard while everybody else was speaking because I heard so many things that I really also resonate with and wanted to say. Starting with the fact that I think, like Molina also said, our mine and most of our generation's dopamine receptors are completely shattered. So there is a certain amount of active effort that I think I have found myself needing to put in to sustain my reading habit. Not because, I mean, like, I understood what Harsh said as well, that if a book is good enough, it will just kind of have you and you'll be with it. But even when a book is really good, because I'm so used to kind of a shorter attention span, or I have this itch or this urge to kind of check my phone or do whatever it is, because attention spans have become smaller for me, I found that one thing, and this is a boring Atomic Habits thing. I haven't read it, but I have read this part of the book. Habit stacking is something that I wanted to talk about because it's something I did unconsciously very young, and I later found out that's what I was doing, and that's how I've managed to sustain a reading habit. So basically, you attach the habit of reading with a habit that you already have, and this is more aimed at people who don't already have a reading habit or who don't already kind of read on a regular basis. That if you want to start, what I do is I read in the morning with my cup of tea, and I've kind of classically conditioned myself like Pavlov's dog. I see tea and I think about my book and I itch for my book. And I think that having a little bit of time slot, like Nirav, just it doesn't have to be like, oh, 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock, or oh, this time to this time, but just mentally kind of knowing that while I'm doing this activity, I will be reading, or after I finish this activity, I'm going to take some time out and spend time with my book. That's helped me kind of sustain the habit of reading, and it can be before bedtime or whatever. And the second thing is that, building on what Molina said, the aestheticism of reading. I think reading has gone from a hobby that used to be quite casual to now people who identify as readers have sort of made it a part of their identity, part of their, like, it's a much bigger deal than it was before. And I think that tends to add a lot of pressure to it. So again, echoing what y'all said, that it's really just about removing the stigma and shame of things from reading. Like, reading is not a superior activity to any other thing, and you should read things that make you happy. So I think these two things.
Awesome. So the next question is for Molina and Nirav. Yeah, because you guys host a lot of offline events. How many people out of all the people who attend these events, how many of them actually read the books by the authors, especially when it's a famous author?
Molina, you want to go first? Molina?
Hi, Nirav. I think Molina's having some network issues. How about you start and she can go next?
Okay, so
Thanks.
so just to give everyone a bit of a fair idea how Broke Bibliophiles work, right? So we don't particularly read just one particular author every month. So we meet once a month. We used to meet twice a month before COVID happened, and then obviously COVID happened and life happened, and so we moved to doing only once a month. And when we do once a month, apart from doing 12 meetups a year, we sometimes do around more when we are calling in authors. Considering the access I have with most of the publishing industry and authors, most are very warm enough to come for such kind of meetups. So first of all, when we do author meetups, you will see around at least 50% of the people who have read the book. If the book has been out for a longer time, if the book has been out for a shorter time, most of the curious folks just come to hear the author, know more about the book, then talk. And apart from that, when we do our general freewheeling meetups, that's our most popular form of meetups, where we get an audience of around 55, 60, 70 sometimes. Our highest has been 190, which we did at IIT Bombay. And that is a massive hit because a lot of people just come in and they just talk about the books they have read. This way people just offload whatever they have read with others, and that helps people to find new books. Again, that becomes like an overall book club curation for everyone else to know about what books people have read and what they should pick up and what they should not pick up, and also an activity to swap their books. So it becomes like a three-way activity to come and meet other people, to talk about other books, and also swap books, make connections, and all of it. And most of the people who come to any of our special meetups, which are author ones, are especially interested to meet the author, to know the industry, how to get published, and all of the things in between. So it's always has been a extremely every general freewheeling meetup which we do, have had active discussions which have gone for around 2.5, 3 hours, and it's just pretty much extreme. You end up going with at least 30 to 40 books on your TBR if you have not read them, right? So that way it really helps, and it really helps people to pick up books. Kind of reading. I used to be a non-sci-fi reader till 2023. I started reading sci-fi in 2024, thanks to a friend of mine who published a book called as The Spice Gate by Prashant Srivatsa. It's a HarperCollins book. Shout out to Prashant. He sent me his manuscript and he was like, just read and tell me what do you feel about it. I'm like, I've never read sci-fi. This is my first attempt of reading fantasy fiction and everything. So he's like, just try. If you find it's good, just go ahead and start reading. So his book was kind of an entry point, and then of course Kanan's book became an entry point for me to figure out Samit Basu, Lavanya, Lakshmi Narayan, and everyone else, and Tashan and everyone else. So Molina?
Is Molina?
Yes, I'm here. Could you just repeat your question?
So, like you do a lot of offline events. I wanted to ask, like how many, like whenever you have an event, how many people turn up who have actually read the book, and then people who haven't read the book?
Understood. I'll also not be turning on my camera because my internet is acting very, weird. All right. So when we host these events, there are a couple of factors involved, right? Which is to say that I think on an average, about 50 to 70 people do turn up, end up reading some part of the book, if not like the entire book. And that is also when we, one thing is like we're very community forward. So we keep posting, reading progresses and cool trivia and a reading guide to sort of push them into reading something or giving daily reminders that, hey, this is something you can read. But also, we also don't discourage them to come to the meetings if they haven't read it, because at the end of the day, once they listen to people talking about the book with a certain kind of passion or the author talking about it, they immediately develop sort of an interest to read it when they go back home and interact with the characters and the plot. We also do one thing which is like a theme-based meetup. So sometimes there are classics, right? But you can't keep, say, Pride and Prejudice as your book of the month, right? Because a lot of people have already read it and had their share of discourses, etc. So what we do is keep a theme like classics. And then you can discuss classics, their evolution, understanding Indian classics versus Western, and how, say, whitewashed our literature education was, etc., under the umbrella of that theme. So that's also something that we've come to explore, wherein people can share their recommendations without having to stick to a particular book, especially when it's a part of like a bigger genre. I think, I think one more thing that we do encourage, and I would differ from Harsh a little here, is that we do prefer interaction over mere consumption, which is to say that I, especially as a child of the pandemic, right, growing up in the pandemic, faced that there was a lot of consumption. And as I mentioned earlier, even though a book, the consumption of a book is way different than a consumption of a 10-second reel, at the end of the day, you're still consuming and keeping whatever you've taken from it inside yourself. And at the end of the day, we need an outlet. We're social animals, and we need to interact with the thing that we've consumed in order to sort of reflect on it and think about how we can think about it differently from different lived experiences. So that's what we do as well at the club, which is to say that, we interact. Even if you've not read the book, we talk about how the book impacted you or the plot impacted you and your lived experiences, rather than say the talk about the literary devices or the characters as such. So it makes the reading of a book an experience surrounding you and the community, rather than about, say, particular plot devices and etc., which are also equally important, but it becomes more about placing the community at the center of the reading experience, which is something that we sort of really incorporate. I think another great way to get people to read is to encourage incorporating pop culture. So whether it's Barbenheimer, whether it's Brat Summer, you'll see us talking about every Twitter, TikTok, Instagram trend with respect to what is going on in the literary and cultural world, right? Also equally important, I think, is politics, because I think reading cannot exist in a vacuum to sort of the social, political, economic structures that it speaks about. So those things, and we love to host like very cool activities. So whether it's a book swap, like Nirav said, or historical tour to, Delhi heritage bookstores, or whether it is, author signings or pop culture quizzes, we keep it very light, very chill, because at the end of the day, I would not want to go to a book club that just sort of, also reading is seen as this elite activity in the minds of a lot of people, where they're like, oh, they're a reader, they'll judge me if I've not read Shakespeare, etc. We really need to, I think, let go of those beliefs, and sort of get everyone into reading and make it cool again. So yeah, so those are some of the things that we keep it, to make it very light, very chill, a place that you can come to find comfort and not judgment. So that also helps a lot of readers to get in on the reading and become a part of like a social circle, rather than just like talk about like merely the book and not indulge like yourself or your lived experiences in it. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it.
Thanks, Molina. Harsh, what you have managed to do with the silent reading community is kind of revolutionary. So it's more than just reading. It has evolved into clubs that paint, knit, and do a number of other activities also. But do you think that the overall experience is being reduced to a photo op, since you also run Bookmark, which is a dating app for readers? Do people come to the reading meetups only to mingle, socialize, or do you think there's actual reading happening there?
Uh, that's actually not our concern at all. I mean, it's a community which the premise of the community is silence, and silence allows a lot of socially anxious people to come out and be there without having the need to interact with each other. So while I do understand the need for book clubs for a lot of outgoing and extroverted people, but a lot of readers are also introverted. So that has created a very, very safe and safe, as well as socially not anxiety inducing space, where you can just come, read, and go back to your home without having to introduce yourself or interact with each other. And that's the reason the number swells to almost 500, 600 people coming to Cubbon Park every weekend. And when it started happening, initially people would bring their paints and started painting along with the readers. And the whole park turns into an island with small little carpets and mats here and there, people doing their own thing. And then painters started gravitating towards each other, and at the end they would have a display of their artwork. People who are reading, they would stack up all their books. So I think, even if I am nobody to judge if people are coming for photo shoot or people are coming to read, it's up to them. So the reason why Cubbon Reads really scaled, and it just did not take off in Bangalore, now there are 110 chapters across 70 cities, is because people lacked a space which allowed their free will to just be. And that has also allowed people to come from all the ages and from all the languages. Otherwise, it becomes a very homogeneous crowd. So we have seen parents of people as well coming in, and people coming in with their kids. So I think it was only mushroom. The only caveat of our organic growth was that we only engaged with those community builders who were using silence as the ethos. So we collaborated or allowed or gave a shout out to communities like knits or paints, because they were inherently a silent activity. There were a lot of people, musicians, who wanted to start Cubbon sings and Cubbon quizzes, and these are communities which are running well, but we did not associate us. They are not an affiliated chapter with us. And it's funny how it's spawned into a global movement, because initially the very first chapter, Lodi Reads, I personally went and started with a friend there, and then handed over it to the friend. And for 3 months, the friend ran it solo. And then it took off, and that gave us confidence. So whenever people from across the world would message us that, hey, why don't you do it here? We would just reverse the question at them. We played the Uno reverse card at them. Hey, why don't you start? All you need to do is follow these steps. And it became, so one thing I think somebody from the panel was mentioning, that I think we basically tapped into the core habit of people going to the park and gave it meaning by going into the park to read a book. So people were anyway going to Cubbon, but they were going as passers-by. They were just moving through the park either for a 5K walk or a run. But we gave them a reason to take the mats and probably a lunchbox or a coffee mug around along with them, and sit and read for 2-3 hours. A lot of people, in fact, if you see our group photo, there are only around 100-200 people in the group photo, because people come and they leave. So there is no registration. We don't have the data. There's no WhatsApp group. So that also really helped in keeping the movement pure from any form of spam. So it's silent, not just online or offline, it's also online silent. And I mean, in this panel, you might get to know that I am one of the co-founders, but on Cubbon Reads, we did not ever mention who is the curator, because we want the movement to run forever. And a true form of, it's an NGO of sorts. So a true aim of an NGO is it doesn't need to exist. So we will happily shut down Cubbon Reads when a day comes when the parks are filled with readers. And I'll relate a short experience. I was in Paris. I was studying there in 2013. And the first day I entered the metro, every third person in the Paris metro was carrying a book. So what it inspired me to do, the very next day when I entered the metro, I would carry a book. And I managed to read so much. So we intentionally wanted to occupy a public space, and a space as prime as Cubbon Park, that and showcase the people are reading out in the public. And now what has happened is all these readers are carrying a book with themselves. So you see people reading in cafes. So basically hijacking a public space for readers and making it notable. And I think social media has played a great part in that. Instagram, it's a photo op that has inspired so many people to carry a book in that way. So I'm glad that it has worked in our favor. And talking about bookmark, it just stemmed from the behavior we saw at Cubbon Reads. So we don't talk for 6 hours, 5 hours of reading. At the end, we all get together and we stack up the books. And then we click a photo and we give the book back to the people. So when the people get their book back, imagine I give a Murakami back to a person. 3-4 readers walk up to the person, hey, I wanted to read this book. Could you tell me how it is? So it becomes book is the filter, and book is the reason why people initiate the conversation. So on Bookmark also, we just you can only put book pictures. Your own picture is blurred, and you start the conversation with book, and only after you exchange 10 messages does the face get revealed. So we just mimicked our offline experience into the virtual digital experience. So it very organically translated. And we never use Cubbon Reads to market Bookmark. So you see Cubbon Reads has 50,000 followers, but Bookmark has barely 1,500 intentionally, because the movement is larger than us and our venture. So that's where we come from.
Quite inspiring, Harsh.
Thank you.
So, Aamatullah, recently, Japanese bookstore novels are everywhere on Instagram, right? Like whether it's days or more days at Morisaki bookshop, the bookshop woman, what you are looking for is in the library, etc., etc. So, is the Bookstagram the new place to get recommendations for your next read?
I mean, yes. Also, before that, I just want to kind of say some stuff based on what Molina and Harsh were talking about. I was just thinking while they were talking that it's so beautiful that both their spaces exist, and like there are book clubs where, I mean, most book clubs have this component of conversation which mimics like a really good English classroom at its best, I'm assuming. And there are silent spaces, because as a person who reads and who, you know, is looking for these spaces, there are days where I really want to be back in a classroom of sorts and talk about books, and there are days where I really cannot stand the thought of someone coming and talking to me, but I still would like to get out and maybe read. So I think it's really cool to have the representation of both these spaces. They're both super important, I think, in the reading atmosphere. So yeah, I just wanted to get that out of the way. And yeah, to the question, I haven't read a single one of these Japanese books. Honestly, I'm a mood reader, and I very intuitively kind of gravitate towards books that I don't know, based on what feel like I will enjoy. Of course, there's a component of, you know, maybe where I've come across the recommendation. Like if I'm seeing a lot of it online, I'm curious towards a book. But for, I don't know, I feel like there's a mysterious X factor that kind of determines what book I'm going to finally pick up. And if I'm not feeling like, you know, reading a particular book, I just won't read it. So that's happened, unfortunately, with these Japanese books. I have not read a single one of them, but I have read a lot of responses to them, and they are mixed. So I won't comment on that. But to the part, is Bookstagram the new place to get book recommendations, or like Book Talk or BookTube the new place to get book recommendations? I think 100%, especially if you are chronically online or you're young and you find yourself being in these spaces a lot. It's, I don't know, it's a great thing, because I think it's definitely increased like the accessibility to reading, and it's true for social media in general. I think now social media is the place to get recommendations for anything. I kind of treat my Instagram as a search engine. We can debate whether or not that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I feel like I open it for every single thing. So yeah, I'm definitely seeing a huge like rise in the number of people who want to read books and who want to find recommendations and who want personalized kind of suggestions based on who they are. The other thing to understand is also that this is a criticism that's leveled at Bookstagram a lot, that it's the same 5 to 10 books that are getting all the attention and hogging all of the space, and everything else has been consigned to the garbage bin. And, you know, literature is dying and no one's talking about these smaller authors and all of that. And I want to address it because it's part of this question. The algorithm kind of works, unfortunately, in a way where if you're new to this space of the internet, it will show you things that are statistically have held people's attention for a longer amount of time. And everything that therefore isn't mainstream taste will get suppressed by the algorithm. So the price that you pay to find genuinely what might be the right recommendation for you is staying on long enough and wearing out that first round of extremely popular recommendations that you will unfortunately have to go through. And the second thing is taking time out to understand who you are as a reader. And then you will, the longer you kind of stay on, this is unfortunate because you are selling your soul to the capitalists in that sense, and your data. But it's the only way. Like right now, if you open my Instagram, I don't get Sarah J. Maas, I don't get Colleen Hoover, I don't get the Japanese bookstore books, I don't get, you know, everyone is telling me like romantasy is this big thing and fairy romances are a big thing, but that's not what I read. So my algorithm has now conformed to my taste, and every second or third thing I see is something that I'm saving because it knows what I want to read. And the creators that I have chosen, it's like blood, sweat, and tears have gone into building this space in a way that it serves me and I can serve it. The community, that the people that follow me, I assume are doing it because I'm kind of catering to their taste, or I'm giving them just enough of familiarity while still throwing in a recommendation that they might not have heard of. And I think that that's the price you pay. Like, you have to wear it out a little bit and spend some time reading different things to understand who you are and what you like. And then Bookstagram becomes the most wonderful place to like get recommendations.
Thanks for that, Aamatullah. So, Molina, Tarun Bairagi has a question for you. It's on the pattern of consumption for, I think he asked the question when we were talking about this thing. So his question is, but the pattern of consumption for the three are different. Reading is active participation. Watching series or reels is very passive and participation.
Yeah, so I think the consumption of any form of media begins passively, right? Unless you're like really sitting down to watch it. Say something like reels, you just tap that button and let the algorithm throw anything at you, right? And if it interests you, you stop and you watch it again, and you like scroll down and then you watch it again, and you share it and save it and all of that. I think when I was saying that you need to approach it as lightly as you would with, say, a Netflix series that you just turn on because the poster looks very interesting, I think you can do the same with reading when it comes to, like, you're not able to do that when you're going before, like, not able to read before bed or can't find the time in the day to sort of distract yourself from other media forms to indulge in a book, right? So even if it comes at the cost of reading one page passively, and a certain hook or a word or a sentence picks up your attention, right? Or if it comes to, like, you're just done with reading one page of the book and then you immediately go to the characters on it on Tumblr or Reddit, even if it comes at the cost of trying like that, that is okay if it indulges you to interact with the book, right? The same way it happens for any other form of media. So even if the Netflix show, it's not working for you within like 2 episodes, you'll shut it down and go to your usual comfort show, right? Or if the reel is not working for you, you swipe to the other reel. So similar way, you can just like give the book a try and not place expectations on it in the way that this needs to owe me some sort of result and meaning because I've indulged in the act of reading a book, right? So it shouldn't be better than other medias or shouldn't be held up to that pedestal. And once you let go of those expectations, even if the book doesn't serve your purpose, right, like Aamatullah said, that they're a mood reader, same, right? That's what I do as well. If it doesn't fit that mood in that time, you can just let go of it and pick it up without any shame another time, right? And I think that gradually, once you get into the habit of picking a book instead of switching on the remote or TV, will help you into getting into reading. So I was just saying that instead of placing it on a pedestal, treat it like other forms of media. Of course, reading does require an active sort of engagement of all your senses once you're thoroughly into it. But if the cost is like getting into it, then you can read it passively, engage with characters, engage with media and adaptations in order to get into the book. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thanks, Molina. That was great. I think Devdatta has lost network. I think the next question is from. The next question is for Nirav. Don't you think people are reading Acts of God because it is written by Gill, not particularly because it is sci-fi? What about the other Indian sci-fi titles like Analog Virtual by Lavanya Lakshminarayan?
I think I answered that question. I'll just reiterate myself. I feel that it's not about Kanan Gill. It's not about Lavanya or anyone. It's more about, one is the writing. At the end of the day, the writing wins. If the writing wins, the book will automatically do well on its own. Even if it's written by Kanan Gill or if it's written by Banana Yoshimoto or Han Kang or anyone else, right? At the end, writing, the accessibility to the writing, and obviously how the publishers market the book and the social clout of that particular person. In some way, the social clout of that particular person is like 15-20% influences people to read. If someone like Kanan Gill, who's a comedian, is writing a book, great. Great for him, great for the capitalistic market again, because I work out of a bookstore. Great for us because we sell around maybe I don't have the exact numbers, but we do sell around 300 to 400 copies a month. It's almost on the 11th month. The book released in January. We have sold more than 4,000, 5,000 copies as far as I remember. So it's not about Kanan Gill, it's not about acts of God. It's more about how one you perceive it. There are a lot of factors, like how you perceive it, what's the writing all about, and as well as the accessibility and how the publishers also look at it. So yeah.
Okay, thanks, Nirav. I think the next question is from Anil. Um, is book gifting a trend that is rising, and what kind of books? So I guess Nirav, you can take that question. I think you are the most qualified to.
Yeah, I mean, book gifting is rising. I mean, I see it on a day-to-day basis. I work out of the bookstore on a day-to-day basis. So I do see a lot of people giving books as gifts. A lot of corporates have moved to giving books as gifts. I recently had a top-tier law firm based out of who uh, a talk about women are not in the space of there are a lot of female lawyers around, and there is a book called as Invisible. I'm sure most of us have. I don't know if you all have read that one. That about the gender bias and data and everything. That lawyer who came to the he's like, I want 500 copies of it. I want to give out to each and every coming for a 1 day a program which our law firm is doing. And I thought, that's an excellent idea. I'm like, he first told me I want to give a box of. I thought, why don't you give a gift as a book as a gift? And then he took my recommendation of this book, and then he was like, I will order 500 copies from you, and I give this book as a gift. It took a week to come back to me, but people are gifting books. I had a lot today. Just today's example, a 14-year-old came in and he told me I want to gift a book to my mom because it's her birthday tomorrow. So I helped her out with a kind of a book she wanted to read, and what kind of book she reads. I took those basic questions and then I suggested her a book to go and buy. I'm like, book gifting is become a big thing, obviously amongst us as readers and as the age group of 18 to 40. But apart from that, corporates have also taken this in their own stride and helped sharing knowledge and gifting out books, which is a very very positive change which I've seen in once I've joined the other side of the trade. So yeah.
Okay, thanks, Nirav. All right. The next question is from Deepti. Buying books in bookstore has typically been losing to buying books online. Have you seen any change in this trend? Harsh, how about you tell us what you think?
Buying books, I don't think I'm qualified to answer that. I think Nirav will be a better.
Sure, yes, but give us your take. Give us your take. I mean,
Personally, I was the early adopter. I'm a tech person, so I'm an early adopter of every single website and app of the world. So when Flipkart arrived in 2007, my entire buying books shifted to Flipkart. I was in Delhi at that time in my college, but I only bought from Flipkart. Then I moved to Amazon because books were cheaper and the minimum COD price used to be 500 rupees. And then I think when I came to Bangalore, Blossoms happened, and Blossoms is such a great place because you find a lot of old books there. So that became a reason for me to visit Blossoms often. I would still look at the book, read the first chapter, and if I liked anything, I would check the price on Amazon. If it was not too far away, I would buy from Blossoms. But if imagine the Blossoms offered me 20% discount and Amazon offered me 50% discount, as much as I am to support a independent bookstore, I still went and bought from Amazon because I wanted to save that 30%. It's typical buyer behavior. And but where Blossoms really helped me, a lot of second-hand books which would be costing 50% of the MRP would cost me much higher. But I found them in their second-hand stall and it was priced at barely 100 or 200. So I bought a lot of those books from Blossoms and I took them home. And just I wanted to add another. I think this question is answered, but there's another question about how to find books to read. I have a take on that. I would love to give that. later.
Yeah. No, please continue. Please tell us.
Yeah, so I think a lot of people are looking at Instagram or internet for book recommendation. As a 35-year-old millennial, I advise strongly against it. The way I have been finding books has led me to some of the rarest finds. And it's because the only way I have found books is through writers themselves. So when I read a book, I go to Paris Review, which publishes exhaustive interviews of all the writers. So if I've read, suppose, Murakami, I've watched each and every interview of his on YouTube. I've read all of his Paris Reviews interview. And I went, so for example, when I read Rushdie, I really liked his Harun and the Sea of Stories, Midnight Children, Shame. Then I went and read his interview, and it led me to Joseph Conrad and Anton Chekhov as two of his greatest influences, which made him write his autobiography as Joseph Anton, which was his autobiography. So I read all of Chekhov, I read all of Conrad. Then I read Conrad's interview from that time. It led me to somebody else. So that's how each book ended up leading me to another writer. When I read Kafka, I looked for reviews by writers of Kafka. I found David Foster Wallace's review on Kafka. I found it really, really relatable to how I liked Kafka. Then I read all of David Foster Wallace's work. So when you're looking at picking your next read, the most trusted source of recommendation will always be the author whose book you loved, because then you can locate their influences and it would lead you to a very rare book. For example, I was reading a recent contemporary author called Amitav Kumar, and his book called A Matter of Rats is about Patna, the city. And there in the book, he mentions Aman Sethi's A Free Man as a book recommendation within the prose itself. And then it led me to Aman Sethi, and Aman Sethi's A Free Man is one of the greatest narrative nonfiction works to come out of India. Nobody knows about it. So it led me to Aman Sethi. Then I read all the interviews of Aman Sethi. It led me to further narrative writing like Catherine Boo, etc. So let authors be your guiding light. There is nobody better, because you already like what they write. So let them lead you to the next book.
So well said, Harsh. Thank you so much for that. Okay, last question of the night. I'm sorry, folks, that's all we have time for. And the last question is from Lasya. She's saying, I'm in the boat that you had described, trying to find books curated to my taste on social media. So far, the only tried and true method has been organic recommendations or physically in bookstores by browsing for hours. So my question is, how did you curate your Instagram? Did it happen over time as you used the platform, or was there any active steps you took to mold it? Molina, Aamatullah, how about you give us your takes? Yeah, Aamatullah, would you like to go first?
Yeah, sure. I mean, how I curated my Instagram is, honestly, it starts with finding one person that you kind of like, and maybe they've spoken about a book that you've already read, and that kind of connect gets established, that okay, this person has sort of similar taste to me, let me go check out what else they're recommending. And I mean, it's this whole thing. We do it with books, we do it with movies, we do it with food. Like you're opening Zomato, checking the menu before going to a restaurant. I'm on Letterboxd, checking reviews before watching a movie. And I also do a lot of movie content as well. So I'm always making these comparisons between books and movies. This thing of like being overly cautious before we pick up a book and kind of needing to be sure that this is something that I will enjoy because this is aligned with all of my other tastes or whatever. Like I know for a fact that if the blurb of a book, or someone has told me that this book has a female protagonist who's mentally unstable and self-deprecating and a little bit funny, I'm 99% more likely to pick up that book based on just that. So then we have these ideas of, I like this specific thing in a book, and I'm looking for this. And that's a good and bad thing. I think I've lost track of the question, but but like, yeah, I didn't do it.
Should I repeat it?
Yes.
Should I repeat it?
Yes.
Okay, sure, sure. No problem, no problem. That is a testament to our declining attention spans, is it not?
Literally, I have been attacked by my own thing.
All right. So the question was, how did you curate your Instagram? Did it happen over time as you used the platform, or was there any active steps you took to mold it?
Yeah, both. It happened over time while I was actively trying to curate it. Is the short answer. Just finding people you like and like following them, going through reviews. And then when you find something you like, then independently do your research, like what Harsh was saying. I also do that. It's not just restricted to Instagram because I'm also a lit student. So I'm in the habit of, you read a text and then you read the influences on that text and you kind of find similar influences. So it's this little web of research that happens.
All right. Great. Thanks, Aamatullah. Molina, how about you wrap it up for us?
Definitely. So agree with everything Aamatullah said. I think the first thing you need to start with is self-acceptance, especially if you're in an age group that is like, perpetually online. The thing is, after college or after work, which also happens like mainly online, you go online to check what your friends are doing and what your favorite influencers and celebs are doing, and it's 12 a.m. already, right? That's usually how my day looks like. And I would really wish for it to be different, but that's how usually it happens, right? So I have given into the acceptance that I do live a digital lifestyle. It's some of it is something that's demanded from me, and some of it is my own choice because I'm not given any other, right? Having said that, I think what we can combine is both Amatullah and Harsh's approach, which is to say that you go on the internet, right, and you start, say you like an author, you search them up on Instagram, or you like a particular book and you search it on Instagram and you see one person talking about it and you don't like their recommendation, and then you keep swiping, right, and then you'll land on a great, and it's not that there is a lack or a dearth of great people talking about amazing books, their quality, right? There are a couple of really good YouTubers like Jack B. Edwards, if I'm not wrong, right? All of these people who talk about books at length and why they matter, especially from the perspective of someone who's reading at your own age and is not judging you for reading a particular genre, right? So you find this, for example, you find this YouTuber, you really like what they're doing, right? You watch 5 videos by them, you pick up the books they've recommended. From that, you go to the authors who are writing them, and thus that chain forms. So I think you just take what Harsh has said about, finding what authors write about and what they mention in their books and what they like to read, to write themselves, but take it to the online experience, right? So you do that with, since you spend all that time online, and if you are there on Instagram, just accept it and cleanse your timeline and curate it to the form that you want it to, because at the end of the day, once you land on a good person who's recommending, right, you'll go into this rabbit hole of seeing other recommendations and what they're writing, etc., etc., and then you'll curate it yourself. So it's just like sort of a chain that forms, and I think that's sort of the best way to land at it. You can also like join communities like Nirav's, like Aamatullah online, like Harsh's, like mine, to sort of get curated reads. If you think that this process is too hefty for you, you can just find places that already do that for you, that talk about South Asian literature, that talk about literature written by marginalized women or other folks, right? And just pick the books up that they're recommending online and offline and give it a go. And if you like it, then that mail, like chain mail, starts again. So yeah, I think that is sort of like the best way to go at it, as does it for fashion recommendations, as it happens for movie recommendations, right? So yeah, I think that's one of the best ways to do it. And yeah, just don't treat it as like a task. It'll happen naturally when it has to. And yeah, just enjoy the process of what you're reading currently, without thinking of whether the next read that you're going to read is going to be just as promising as well. So yeah, I think that's the best thing that I can say when it comes to curating your feed.
I also wanted to just quickly add something because it came to me that, like, this whole thing of like, where is my next read going to come from is something that I've only recently found out that people actually really worry about. And I just feel like there isn't a certain amount of like intuition that happens. Like, if you don't think about it, you kind of will know what book to pick up next. there are so many recommendations at the back of our head that are in our mental and actual literal TBRs, but there's also a feeling you get sometimes you're in a bookstore and you see a book and you don't need to really do anything. You know you should pick it up. Like, I feel like there is this like mysterious thing that happens with books. Sometimes it happens to me at least. And I think the less seriously you take the whole thing, and the more you kind of lean back into maybe why you started reading in the first place, because you enjoyed it and because it made you happy, it just happens. Like the right book finds you at the right time and something happens. So just
I
chill.
think the book chooses the reader, as they say.
The reader
Yeah.
and chooses the wizard. So